Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Feckin' Egypt.
Welcome to the Freakin' Egypt podcast.
Feckin' Egypt. Yeah, I wore it on vacation, and my grandfather and my dad were walking over. My mom gave it to me while I was on vacation, and because she got it in Ireland, and my dad and my grandfather walking over, and my dad says to my grandfather, "Do you see what your grandson is wearing?"
He's a feckin' Egypt.
Feckin' Egypt. All right. So we can just dive right in, but I do want to say that I was using a term incorrectly when communicating with you. So if we are not talking about the same topic, I am prepared for the other option. So I was using the term "death of the artist," and when I was adding notes and stuff to Trello, and then when I went and actually Googled "death of the artist" to try to find the exact definition, it was not what I was expecting. So I was meaning, I was talking. I want to do an episode about separating art from the artist as far as morality.
I took that from the context of the other notes around it.
Gotcha.
Like when I first saw the words "death of the artist," I said, "Ooh, is he talking about the death of the art form or something cool and deep?"
Yeah.
And then I saw your examples. I'm like, "Oh, you mean like reading um,
Nabokov,
Lovecraft, even though Lovecraft is a horrible racist."
Yes, exactly. And I mentioned to you, so for listeners, we've already done episodes on cancel culture, and I'm not against repeating subjects if we have new takes on them. This episode I didn't want to do about cancel culture. I wanted to do about almost specifically dead artists. So because
Like Jerry Garcia.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny that he doesn't know who Jerry Garcia is.
No, I know who Jerry Garcia is. Grateful Dead.
And he's dead. So he's a dead artist both ways.
I understand. I just didn't get the joke because it wasn't a good joke. Don't be a
fucking Egypt.
No. I thought, I was like, I don't know anything problematic about Jerry Garcia. That's what I thought you were talking. No, but
so Grateful Dead.
So the reason I say that is that I wanted to do kind of dead artists specifically is it's very easy, and it's different math for me, talking about Louis C.K. or Woody Allen's a better option.
I think it overlaps because some of the
because
some of where I'll draw my line works for live or dead people.
Sure,
but we can jump in.
There can be overlap for sure, but I'm just saying that, to me, so I will not pay money to go see Woody Allen, his stuff. But if you told me Charlie Chaplin, if there was a Charlie Chaplin movie in a theater, I would potentially go pay to see that. And the difference between, what he was accused of doing to his daughter that's not his wife, the other daughter, is more intense than anything I'm aware of from Charlie Chaplin. But Charlie Chaplin did at least one or two of his wives were underage, and so he had to marry them he married them in order to legally be able to have sex with them, which is pretty reprehensible.
He might as well start his own religion at that point.
Yeah. So, but and it's 100 years ago. So that's the other thing, is that morality. There is some morality issues that I think changed with time, but also on top of that, when I give money, when I go pay to see a Charlie Chaplin movie, I'm not giving money to Charlie Chaplin because he's been dead for 50 years or 45 years. He died before I was born, so he's so that's where I wanted to distinguish. I do briefly want to talk about the true death of the artist because concept, but we can do that now and get it out of the way, or however you want to do it.
Yeah, I'm easy.
So I googled the theory of death of the artist or death of the author. Depends on. I've heard it both ways.
That's a great line from a great comedy movie. called Transforming the Faith.
Yeah, oh yes, yeah. I was like, great comedy movie. I think I stole it from something else though. I don't think it's an original from us.
It just was in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. The death of the author is a literary theory that argues that the meaning of a text is not determined by the author's intention, but rather the reader's interpretation. This theory was first introduced by French philosopher Roland Barthes. I don't know if that's pronounced correct.
Who cares?
Barthes, in his essay "The Death of the Author" in 1967.
Yeah.
I don't
Being that once the author finishes putting pen to paper, he might as well be dead because the art lives by itself.
And it belongs to us at that point. To some, there is. I think that is its own interesting discussion that we can have too. But and there is some overlap here, but largely, I mean,
I stopped believing that when I got an English degree.
Oh yeah.
I used to believe that until in the pursuit of my English degree during a higher level class where we spent, like 3 months on one author and read everything he wrote. And I realized, oh, my initial interpretation of one poem that I would have argued my interpretation was valid changes completely when I read all his poems and realize, well, there's no way he meant that. And so, yeah, I agree. You can get out of whatever you want to get out of something. That's fine.
Yeah.
But there also is a meaning that was intended. So like I think both exist. Like it's more like the Schrodinger's death of the author.
Sure.
Because there's the meaning that you get in your experience with it, and there's the meaning that it actually should have.
Yes. I also think that with art that is very specific to one author, that makes sense. But then you have and some of this, I'm sure, a lot of this, what I'm about to say, came out about after 1967. But when you have,
I was around for that, man. You don't remember 1967. I distinctly remember it because I was born in November of 1967.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
rough 2 months, man.
I think that when you look at something, and I'll use Star Wars as an example, but like if you looked at Star Wars, if Star Wars the movie, not Star Wars the series, came out and George Lucas never did anything else with it and never sold the rights, never had other movies made, I'd say that's his one movie to interpret, like the way he intended. But when you then get multiple artists and it comes and goes, and I think comic books are a great example of this, we don't typically think about the fact that Peter Parker is a metaphor for puberty and adolescence anymore, because new artists have come in, and so it's in. So I think that when you look at something like Mark Twain or F. Scott Fitzgerald or something where it was very much nobody else was going on and writing. I know that there's been additional Sherlock Holmes works and things like that, but actually there's been additional Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer fanfic stuff. But
it even happens with, things written. I mean, it's like you talked about George Lucas continuing to do movies, but versus like doing one book or doing a series of books and having characters change over the course of the series. They age, they mature, they're done different. Like if you ever read the Dexter books that the serial killer Dexter TV show was based on.
Yeah.
One of the books, the author just goes nuts. He suddenly makes it not about being mentally damaged as a kid, but being possessed by a demon, and he can recognize when another serial killer exists because his demon knows their demon, and it's suddenly a supernatural book, and it sucked. And the next book totally stopped mentioning it, like it went away. Like there was always a metaphor of his unseen passenger, but then in one of the books it becomes no, there's a demon. That's the passenger. He's possessed, and then it was so horrible that they just forgot about it in the next book.
Yeah, retconning is good.
Self-retconning in the series. Or not retconning as much as just not mentioning it again. Like, it went back to being metaphor. Like it didn't say I'm not possessed. They just didn't talk about it anymore.
Yeah. So back to the non-death of the artist concept that we had originally.
The concept of personally canceling an artist, and does that change when they, based on whether they're alive or dead?
So I'm interested in your take.
Yeah, I think that depending on what your issue with the person is.
Sure.
There's the one. There's different cracks of self cancellation, or self but personal. Like I'm not protesting and saying everyone should cancel this person, but saying I don't want to watch things by this particular artist, creator, whatever. There's the financial one. There's like I don't need a Chick Fil A because the money will go towards horrible things. So this thing I don't want to give money to a person. That's one level,
Hmm.
and that one clearly should go away if the artist dies, because
Yeah.
they or gets put in jail where they're not making money off it anymore. You know,
Unless their family is like just as evil as them or something, you know.
right? Yeah, I mean, but it's like the economic thing kind of goes away, but then there's and for me that's majority of it for me because I'm able usually generally to separate the artist from the art. And like I don't like I'll watch things that are streaming even if there's someone problematic in it. Like I don't feel like I mean until the strike they weren't getting any money off it for streaming. And especially if they're like so my example would be um, Tom Cruise. My wife hates Tom Cruise because of his anti-science stances and saying that postpartum depression doesn't exist. If women would just eat healthier and take vitamins, they wouldn't have postpartum depression. And my wife, who went through serious postpartum depression, hates him because of that.
Just I want to push back on that for a second. You said he's anti-science, but I think he's so in favor of science that he believes in the tautology of science.
Yes, he does believe in the tautology of science. He is a tautologist of science. Um, Ironic name for it, isn't it?
I mean, I grew up with a family member who was Christian Scientist, and people would ask, A, they would. I get a lot of times people being like, "Oh, is that like what Tom Cruise is?" And I'd be like, "No." And then B, you'd get people being like, "Oh," and then you'd explain it, and they'd be like, "Wait a second, so there's no medicine?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know why the word science is there."
Yeah, and to good marketing. Yeah, and I should say it's not like my wife hates him because he's a Scientologist. Because we watch other things by other Scientologists. Just because he was very publicly vocal attacking Brooke Shields, it was at the time for talking about postpartum depression, and my wife had just gone through and it was like done with him.
So she supports Danny Masterson, is what you're saying.
Strongly, she wrote a letter in support of him.
Oh my god.
So let's get my wife canceled.
I
But
did see. Sorry, I did see a short like Instagram reel this week, and it said the cast of Forgetting Sarah Marshall is not having a great year, and it was they were like showing Jonah Hill and and Jonah Hill being like he had his issues.
weaponizing his therapy talk or whatever.
And then there was Russell Brand this past week, and then there was Mila Kunis, and they were like, "Jason, please don't do anything."
But yeah, so like we're upset with him. So my wife's like,
Yeah.
when my wife can't watch anything of his. I mean, and she loved Top Gun; it's one of her favorite movies. But when she starts to watch something with him, she cannot disassociate the artist, and she's like, "I hate him! I hate him! I hate him!" And she can't enjoy the movie. Where I won't go pay to see his movies because I guess I don't really want to reward him for the things he said and the harm that he did. But if it's streaming, especially knowing that they don't get streaming royalties, I'm happy to watch Day After Day of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow was it the one that
Yeah.
loops?
Terrible
I can
name, great movie.
I can watch that movie endlessly, literally,
Yeah.
like forever. I mean, and I'll watch that every time it's on streaming and I come across. So for my wife, it's not a choice. It's I can't watch a Will Smith movie because if I see him on the TV, I get angry and can't watch the movie. For me, I generally can. I can say, it's fine. I can watch someone who's an asshole. I just don't want to give money to them.
Sure.
So with the death of the artist, I'm totally fine with um, enjoying their art as long as knowing it's good to know if their issue was an ideological one, to be aware of that crappiness so that you can filter it in your head when you watch their art and
Yeah.
and judge it that way, as opposed to Harvey Weinstein produced things and he was a horrible rapist. It doesn't affect the work that he did,
Yeah.
because he didn't put rape.
He
into
wasn't making
movies.
rape movies. Well,
Right.
maybe a couple,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah,
pro
like
rape.
as opposed to when I watch a Zack Snyder film, I'm like, the reason everyone is dark and evil and shitty is because he's a dark, evil, shitty Ayn Rand freak and can't understand that anyone can have a noble purpose for doing anything. So all of his movies have this stupid, dark, greedy, selfish edge. So it's important to know that so you don't get caught up in the selfish edge. Go, yeah, Superman should be a dick. Like, no, Zack Snyder doesn't understand Superman.
I agree that Zack Snyder doesn't really understand Superman, but I don't know. I feel like I don't really think he's a dick. I think that he has wildly different political takes than me, but he also seems like to be one of the good Republicans. But like I've heard him defending, like attacking people on their own stream about getting racist and stuff, and they thought that he would embolden them, and he's like, no,
Yeah,
fuck
yeah.
him.
I don't think he's a MAGA head. He's a pure libertarian,
Yeah,
Ayn Randian, and that.
yeah,
And I'm just saying for that ideology to be in his.
yeah,
It's like I watch great videos on like Watchmen the movie versus Watchmen the comic, and saying it's like 90% perfect lift. But let's look at the 10% that isn't, and everywhere it differed, it was to add a libertarian twist to it.
yeah. Well,
So just being aware of that. I'll watch Watchmen 24 times in a row. I love it, but it's nice to be aware of where the
yes,
difference is and why. What the subliminal messaging is in there.
yeah. I think that so there's a lot of stuff that I think we make a big as a culture make a big deal out of that you try to I think it was Bill Maher that said not to judge history by today's standards. uh Somebody recently said, yeah, I'm pretty sure he said something along those lines, like we shouldn't be, and he was talking about like 90s comedies, right?
You're like, don't hold. I do
Yeah.
old style comedy. Don't hold me to your standards.
And
Is probably what he meant.
yeah, and I think like I think that there is some truth to that, and like we need to recognize that things are a product of their time, and so sometimes that means that they are problematic by today's standards, but not by the standards of then. And I always push back when someone says that and say like, okay, but don't hold today till yesterday's standards either, then, because they do that a lot. Like it used to be okay for me to say the N word, Well, yeah,
you couldn't make this movie today,
so
right? You couldn't, but that's fine,
right? So like, there's like this weird like, if you want it one way, you gotta have it both ways, and I do, and I think that there is some of that, and I think
that is a fair position for you to hold.
and I think when you take a look at certain social things, like, so I'm not trying to defend Charlie Chaplin, but I'm saying that based like on the fact that there was a legality to it, and morality of the time was significantly different when it came to like
Age of consent was a completely different story. I mean,
right,
it's not even completely different. It's legal in North Carolina to marry a young teenager if you can get the parents to approve it.
right,
But it's just socially unacceptable.
right,
But it wasn't socially unacceptable then.
right. And so I think, and I mean, so I think there's that stuff to take into account. I think when you look at, and the big one that gets brought up a lot of time is slavery, and judging slave. And I don't know much art that applies to slavery in that way, like
Gone with the Wind.
but it wasn't made by slavers, is what what I mean. Like,
yeah.
it
just glorifies the time period.
Maybe D.W. Griffith was a slave owner. He's old. He would have been old enough potentially to have been, but like film wise, it doesn't translate the same. I know that Mark Twain at one point in his life had been pro-slavery when he was young, but by the end he was very much against it. So like that's the other thing, is taking into account change and growth.
Yeah, but something that always amuses me about when people try to justify slavery as a cultural paradigm at a different time, it's like, no, the people who were enslaved knew it was wrong. The people in the North who were fighting the Civil War knew it was wrong. It's like not like nobody knew it was wrong,
right? And there was moral abolitionists, not just like not like there. And we do see a lot of there's that old bit about Abraham Lincoln, and if I could have it all be slave or all be free, that's the only way it's going to work. And I don't. At this point, I just want it to all be united. I don't care. Like there's a lot of people who think it was a pragmatic thing, and sure, pragmatism did come into it for some. But there were people who were morally, and there were white people who were morally. So this isn't like I know it's wrong because I'm being hurt in this. There's other people who are like, no, this is morally wrong.
I mean, there's a book, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's about this guy named Moses, and his people are enslaved, and God, kills the firstborn of all of them. I forget.
I think it's called Exodus.
Yeah, Exodus. Yeah,
Exodus.
Exodus. It was part of the Bibli series.
Yeah. And specifically, I think it's in the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be hilarious if someone just like logged on to this podcast for the first
Guys are
time, and we're like,
idiots.
do these guys not know how to pronounce fucking anything? Are they
Did I just turn on Data Over Dogma by accident?
are they feckin' Egypts?
Just turned on Data Over Dogma. Those two Dans don't know what they're talking about. Which
But
is my new favorite podcast. I can't get enough of.
I'll have to.
Yeah, it's
add that. I
really
need
cool.
I need something new in my rotation. I'm because god awful movies I just don't give a shit about. So
Yeah, I never listened to that one. But the Data Over Dogma, it's a biblical PhD in biblical interpretation. He speaks, ancient Hebrew, translates it, and he is a believer. He's a Mormon, and he's with an ex-Mormon who's an atheist, and they do a podcast basically debunking interpretations of the Bible, using the data over the dogma versions. And it's really funny because he's very strict on this. Obviously, didn't happen when he's a believer.
yeah,
So I'm not sure where his belief comes in, since he's very rational about which things that clearly didn't happen in the Bible.
yeah.
But in any case, it's about like people who had a book about how God Himself intervened to stop people being enslaved still make the argument, that they didn't know it was wrong.
But to be fair, that book is in favor of slavery. Like Leviticus, was it 25?
It's got rules for how to do
So,
how to do your slavery for sure.
it's one
But
of
it's
those.
also got a big story about how it's not a good thing, because
It's not a good
one
thing
of
when
the
it
things-
happens to God's chosen people.
Well, one of the things that Data Over Dogma they repeat routinely is you can't treat the Bible as if one person wrote it with one message.
Mhm.
It's a collection of stuff, and so of course it's self-contradictory, because it has to be. It's not one story. It's people threw stuff together. But I was just saying, like, you can't pretend that nobody knew it could, even if the
Mhm.
Bible lets you do it both ways. The idea that, well, they didn't know it was wrong is ridiculous when there's the whole story about how wrong it was.
Yeah.
Even if they continue to do it later, it was still clear that it's wrong.
I like watching old clips of Matt Dillahunty talking to people on atheist experience, and when they're and getting into the Leviticus 25 part of it, and people be like, but that was for the time, and he's like, but if God's all knowing and omniscient and they're like, well, God, they wouldn't have accepted it, and then
People
he's
ate
not all
shrimp, and he told them
powerful.
he told them to stop eating shrimp, and he told them not to wear multi
Yeah.
fabrics, but he couldn't bother to say don't do this. Like,
Yeah.
that didn't, like, well, they wouldn't have listened, but he said don't kill. Like, he's God.
Yeah.
Like, why couldn't he put the rule in there? Yeah, maybe God didn't write it. But so that's where in my house there's a difference. So I don't watch things that my wife doesn't want to watch because she gets upset with people who she doesn't want to see in it, alive or dead, because it's not about the money for her. It's about I can't stop thinking about what they did, so I can't do it. And for me, that happens with some things. Like I don't feel like I can watch Bill Cosby stand up because I can't see him as a harmless purveyor of wisdom and wit.
Yes.
At the same, like his knowing who he is, his persona on stage doesn't work for me anymore.
Right. From that perspective, though, Woody Allen should be fine because he basically played the thing he's been accused of so many times.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then-
he's a creepy little horn dog. We
Yeah.
know that he's a creepy
Yeah.
little horn dog.
Yeah. I just wanted
And
to say-
really, I do like his. I will always love his moose. Have you ever heard of his moose story? His story about hunting a moose.
No.
I can do it word for word, but I will not do it justice. So if you are willing to
will.
listen to him
Yeah.
online, find it on YouTube, and
Yep.
it's one of my favorite monologues of all time.
Yeah.
I used to make my pledges memorize it in my fraternity days.
Yeah. I just want to say, because you mentioned about the Bible. Oh, it's almost like it wasn't written by God. Logan asked Sarah and me the other day something about the first people, and I was like, I don't know, and he was like,
Canadian Indians.
and he's like,
First
well, it was
Nations.
Adam and Eve, and I was
Oh,
like,
them.
oh, and I'm like, oh, okay, and I forget why the topic came up, and we started talking about it, and I said, hey, if you want, I just want you to know this, okay? The book was written by men, and they want to keep men in charge. So you need to keep that in mind. And I said, when you're interpreting some of what they wrote in that part, I said, for example, because he doesn't know how babies are made, but he knows how 8 babies come to the world through a vagina. So the
How does a stork get in a vagina?
you know, he's never heard the stork story, but he does. He doesn't know about insemination and all that shit. But he knows about
Babies grow in mommy's tummy.
yeah, and how they come out. Although he did when he asked us one day and we told him, he's like, "Oh, I thought it was out their bum," and I was like, "Yeah, that's gross, but yes." But we were so he knows all
Boys
that.
come out that way.
So I said, like Logan, in the Bible, in the story of Adam and Eve, they talk about the fact that God made man first and then took Adam's rib to make Eve, and that's why she is woman, because she's from the womb of man. And like only somebody who wants to support the like that guys are the originals and guys are the best would get it that wrong. And he was like, he was looking at me, and I didn't, he doesn't know what a womb is. But as soon as I said it, he's like, "Well, that doesn't make any fucking sense." Like he had this look on his face, like that doesn't make any sense.
Especially because they didn't speak English then, so that wouldn't be the way they would make up the words.
True, but
that just sounds like a church thing.
It could have been. I don't know.
But the other thing to ask him is say, look, they had 2 kids, Cain and Abel, and Cain killed Abel, and then he went and got married. Who did he get married to? He went to live with the other people of the world, and he was afraid they would kill him when they found out that he was the one who murdered his brother. But why would he be afraid of that if the only other people were his parents?
Yeah. Well,
there are some other people around in that story.
Yeah.
So the Jewish interpretation is always, well, Adam and Eve were the first Jews. You guys, you're descended from all those other people. The Jews are descended from Adam and Eve. Nice. Until you get to Noah, and then everyone's descended from that family because everyone else got wiped out. So it's irrelevant anyway.
True.
And there were 2 irrelevants on the ark, a male and a female. Or probably 7 pairs of them, or whatever it really
is. Yeah. When Sarah and I were looking at Kentucky to go visit Kentucky, just because it's one of our states that we have.
For the Ark Park?
Well, we were looking at going there, and I was like, "There's a Corvette museum, and we can go." One of my cousins lives. A bunch of my cousins lives in like Cincinnati, but one of my cousins lives right over the border in Kentucky. And we can go, see all of them and have dinner in Kentucky and do stuff. And Sarah was like, "Would you be interested in going to this Ark Park?" And I was like, honestly, like I don't want to give them money, but also like I don't want to because Sarah doesn't believe in the literalness of the Bible, right?
She's not a young
so like she would have just gone out of a curiosity thing, but I'm like, I don't want to go and make you feel uncomfortable as I'm like, this is wrong, this is wrong, what the fuck?
There's dinosaurs on it.
Yeah, and there's like animals that there is no evidence ever existed on it that are supposed to be like
dinosaurs.
Yeah. Jesus rode a dinosaur, so don't be a so anyway, back to slavery.
So back to dead people. So so I think for me, emotionally, if there's some reason I can't let go of the particular person because I can't, not a choice. I don't. There's no one I choose not to watch their content as a statement. There's people that alive or dead. Like there's no one I choose not to. There's just some like Cosby that I just can't. Like I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do willing suspension of disbelief to enjoy it. And my wife, that's like universal. Like, Flash movie, like she could not get into it at all because Ezra Miller has had so many problems. Mm-hmm. And even if they end up being like, they have mental health issues and they're dealing with them, and it's not a negative moral judgment on them, just being aware of it kept pulling her out of the movie.
Yeah.
At least in the first third. After a third of the way through, their performance is actually so good in that. I mean, the movie's not great overall, but Ezra's performance is pretty.
The special effects are terrible, and I don't love the Savitar twist of or like way that was done. But yes, I agree that the performance was excellent.
I mean, you forget that there is one actor. Like they play the dual role so flawlessly, and that's where the special effects was perfect. That's why I think the special effects that were bad were chosen to be bad. It was just a bad decision creatively because it looked crappy. But the fact that the 2 Barrys look perfect all the time means they have the special effects skills. Right. They just purposely did it weird as a choice. And choice.
So this sounds like this is going to apply more to Madhavi than you, but does she? What about redemption? If for example, like you said, if the mental health comes into it, and but let's say they also make some steps towards making it right with the victims, and enough time passes, and there's like a legitimate redemption. Would she be open to that in any case, or
Well, I mean, again, I think with her also, it's not a conscious choice. Is that
sure,
she can't?
sure, but
She's her level of not being able to put it aside is just much on the more on the surface than me. So
sure,
potential. So I really can't answer because I don't know of a case
yeah,
where she's. I mean, I think she's been able to watch like a Tom Cruise movie here or there in the recent years because it's been decades now.
yeah, and I
Um,
think he did apologize, although I don't think he did anything substantive.
yeah, so I think she's not as upset as she was about that.
Right. That's what I'm just curious. Because I mean, I think it's one of those things where redemption is largely. I think it's important to be able to have the option for redemption, but I also think redemption is it,
Yeah,
it's
who's
a,
granting you redemption? Like, is
right,
it victims or oh, okay, I'll say I forgive you. Now I can watch your movies again.
right, and but I also and I also think like it is if I, for example, I was bullied and sexually assaulted as a young person, young, not quite adult. Um, I don't have any ill will towards that person, and so I don't want them to lose. Assuming that they're not doing any of that shit still, I don't want them to lose jobs or anything else because we were very young, and if that person's now a good person, otherwise I have no problem. I
The
never
person who
want to,
did it doesn't exist anymore,
but
really.
I never want to see that person again.
Right.
Like I
Yeah.
don't like want to interact, and I don't think that that's an unacceptable way of looking at it. For example, like I'm trying to think of somebody who's done something terrible, but not. I think Louis C.K. is probably the best example of somebody. I don't know that he's done the work fully to be redeemed. I don't know, but Louis C.K. what he did is not the same as Woody Allen.
Well, like my example would be Al Franken.
Sure, Al Frank is that's a
Because he
much better example.
yeah, and he left the Senate over it, to make up for what he did.
Yeah,
He never really assaulted anyone other than doing things that were in bad taste and over a line of
yeah,
of of decency for the joke because he was in comedian head of anything goes if it's a laugh, and that's not right, but
right,
that's where he was,
right.
and he's apologized for it. He voluntarily stepped down and said,
Yeah,
I should pay for what I did, but now he's got a podcast, and
yes,
I don't feel bad about listening to that podcast on occasion. I don't
yes,
think he
that's a
is
much better
past redemption.
example. But I also understand for if that woman that he did the joke to, which I get, she was asleep, and I forget, was it that he took a picture,
Well,
like he wasn't
but
actually touching.
he put his hands over and went ooh like but that was
Yeah,
one of the things. There was
sure.
also some people said like at like the state fair when they would take a picture, he'd smack someone's butt so they go ooh right when the picture was being taken. Like he
Oh,
wasn't doing it to be
sure.
sexual. He was doing it because it was goosing them would be funny,
Yeah, okay, but
which is inappropriate and wrong, and he apologized for it.
yeah. So I
All
think
that stuff, but it was wrong.
us as society can say, okay, he's done his part, and I would if I met any of those women or other people that he had those bad interactions with, and they're like, yeah, I am never gonna like, I'm never gonna watch or
I'm still in
participate.
therapy. I can't take a picture with someone because of how
Right. Well,
was.
yeah, or if they're just like, I don't want him to be punished forever, but I'm not ever
Yeah.
going to listen to a podcast. I will change the channel if he shows up on the news. Like, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's not an overreaction. That's not unacceptable. But we as a society behave differently than a victim, and I don't mean that to belittle the victim. I also think that you know, it's hard. Al Franken's the best example. It's hard to find examples where it can be that.
What was the harm done? Is
Yeah,
it something you can recover from?
yeah,
That without the victim being the person who said.
right.
And there's something though that I don't know if I always accept a victim's um, acceptance of someone. If
Sure,
someone was so victimized that they're like, "No, it's okay, I deserved it."
sure.
That that doesn't relieve the person to me.
Well, there's that. There's also, hey, like if I was just what I was just saying about my bully slash assaulter. Like if I'm their only victim that they'll ever did any of that stuff to, then I have no problem with them living a good life. But if they are out there, or if they
became a priest,
if they went out and did more stuff, I know that he's popped up on LinkedIn before. He's not a priest.
I had someone who was didn't assault me to that level, but was like annoying, teasing bully.
Yeah,
like in nursery school, preschool, kindergarten, up to like second grade or something, right? Nicknames, just teasing. Who I like really didn't see again after elementary school. I don't know if we didn't even go to the same junior high school or high school, like we may have went different paths. But a couple of years ago, he reached out to me on Facebook, and I was like, "Oh, I remember that asshole. He used to tease me all the time." And he just sent me a friend request, and I was like, "But we were kids, and it didn't do any permanent damage. It would be petty of me, I thought, me personally in this experience, not judging anyone else's responses, to not accept his friend request just because when we were young. I mean, like I don't need to be his best friend or anything, but what the hell?" So I said yes. The next day, I get a message from him, and it's this deep apology for how he teased me and how he treated me. But like I'm saying, we were like 8 or 9, and between 4 and 8. Like we were not adult. It wasn't high school teasing. And I looked at it and I said, I bet he's in a 12-step program. Like, and he had to apologize and make amends, and like he's gone this far back, like to elementary school, to make amends. So I graciously said, "Hey, man, it has not affected my life. I'm totally cool with it. You don't owe me anything." And we never spoke again. Never commented anything on Facebook. Never sent me a note. It was like he just needed to connect with me so he can get the apology he needed, so he can move on, which hopefully helped him.
That would be a good.
But I don't watch his movies.
No, that would be a good topic. For us
a
to
topic
get
we
into
could talk about one day is restorative justice.
Sure. Yeah.
And because I have an issue with for this topic, right? Like, let's go to your buddy James Gunn. We did it on Anthony's Apologies. We made the joke how he had made bad jokes 10 years before, and it came back to haunt him.
Yeah.
And in my mind, if we believe in restorative justice, if somebody did something 10 years ago and they have not repeat offended in 10 years, then what's the use of punishing them now? They've already become a better person. Like, you're not going to make them a better person. They've already done that. Like, just because you didn't get a chance to punish them just feels sadistic to me.
Yes, I agree. Sorry, I'm writing down restorative justice, and what I was going to suggest was just 12-step programs, especially as atheists. I think that's an interesting topic, but I don't have
I need to talk to somebody and get some expertise first.
Yeah, so I think it would be interesting to bring on somebody, maybe even do.
I might find someone random, like all the atheist Facebook groups. I'm like, sure somebody, just random person like us, has had some experience they can talk about as a non-expert.
Yeah. As far as restorative justice, by the way, that term, I'm sure part of the reason why you're using that is because Noah had the people on from the woman
Anne.
on from, is her name Anne?
No, I said Can.
Okay, yeah. Woman from their new organization, and I need to look into it for us, but I think that would be a good thing for us to participate.
I was going to say, are we too small to even like I feel like we'd be using it to network.
Yeah, I mean, possibly, but also it would be nice.
Who are we going to harass, our wives?
But it also might, like, if we're on that and we've gone through that program and we can do that, it may also like let people know that it's acceptable to, because like I would imagine that if you're CogDis or any of those other ones and you're trying to get other people on, like the vetting process has to be difficult to get your guests on, especially they've had some guests that since then have kind of been problematic. So not just cognitive dissonance. I was just using them as an example.
Yeah. Well, I would say at TFS we talk about how many people we turned bad. Like, we've had 4 or 5 speakers who ended up being horrible people.
Yeah.
A year after they were with us, and like, is it us? Did we cause it? They came through our doors and they became horrible.
I also think like the accountability of it, like participating in the accountability side of things may help. Just it's like putting pronouns in your profile. It may just be a good way of just kind of letting it become the norm. I personally, like I said, I think that what you said made sense about whether or not it's ideological and it's in their work. As also, I haven't come across. Okay, I haven't come across an example of someone who I genuinely enjoyed, who I find their behavior so despicable that I can't enjoy watching them, that is dead. So I was talking about John Wayne earlier today with some coworkers, and we were talking, and you and I had talked, and I think when Wes was on maybe a month ago, we talked about John Wayne and how he had some very bad. I won't say problematic. Problematic makes it.
He was a racist.
Problematic is gray area.
He's a racist.
He's a racist. But I also think he's a bad actor. I never really enjoyed him before.
Bad
I
actor
knew that
in both
about
terms.
him. Yes, but I never enjoyed his work before I knew that about him. So it's not like if I all of a sudden found out that Charlie Chaplin helped co-write Mein Kampf or something like
bad Jew.
He's not a Jew. There's a famous part of
how did he do comedy?
He was not a Jew. There's a famous part in Chaplin where there's a Nazi at a party in pre-war Hollywood, mid to late 30s, and he's speaking because there was Nazis were coming here to try to basically drum up support for the non-Holocausty part of the non-specifically outwardly Holocausty part of their ideology.
The Henry Ford side of things.
Yeah. And so he's at this party, and there's a lot of people talking, and Chaplin says something along the lines of, he rebuts him, and he goes, "Oh, you must be a Jew," and Chaplin, his response in the movie, and I believe that they said it was based on a real line that he said was, I do not have that honor, but I have a great affection for them."
Yeah. He's a Brit, right? He was a Brit.
Yes, yeah.
But he had an ish in his name. He was Ish. He was British.
Yeah.
Similar.
I mean, he does look like he maybe
a little Jew. Say it, little Jew. Say it.
No, I was going to say little
Say
Jew.
it. Say it.
I was going to say he looks like he could be Jewish.
It was funny. That's what I was just assuming, because everyone is funny is Jewish.
Yeah. Although at that time, I'm trying to think. I know that the three Stooges were Jewish.
Stooges, Marx Brothers.
Yeah. What about Buster Keaton? I don't think was Jewish. Fatty Arbuckle, I don't think was Jewish. I'm trying to think of the other comedians of the day. So I guess here's the question: is he's dead. He's been dead for 60 years. Can you specifically, not you as the audience, but you, Matthew, can you enjoy watching Hitler's speeches again?
I like the rhythm.
Yeah. Oh my God! I saw a clip from I like
Charlie Chaplin doing Hitler.
Yes, I do like that too. I love that speech. It's one of my favorite speeches of any movie. I will share it in the link. I'll link it to it in the show notes. But there's a speech from the end of The Great Dictator, and Charlie Chaplin gives this. He's supposed to be pretending he's a character. It's a very much a a Prince and the Pauper style story about a Jewish barber and Adolf or Adele Hinckley or something. It's supposed to be Adolf Hitler, but it's not specifically Hitler's name, and they get confused and mixed up, and he's giving this speech, and it's amazing. I will include it in the show notes. It's touching and funny. I think it's as applicable today as it was 85 years ago when it was made. Anyway, you want to start wrapping it up? I know this kind of feels short, but I'm so fucking tired.
Yeah, okay.
And hungry. I don't think Sarah's going to get stuff for food, though. So anyway, big stuff. I don't know what we're gonna do for. Oh, I did write some ads in. We can record. We can close it out, and then we can record little bits for that. Did you watch any of the ads from the advertising episode yet?
No.
Okay. I did the like TV filter on them and just did like act now, and
I have to go look at it.
yeah. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to talk to you quickly about a couple of ways you can support the show, and you don't have to let these artists die of starvation. You can give us your support by liking our videos on YouTube, subscribing. If you're listening to this instead of watching it, you can obviously hit follow, hit subscribe if you're on, depending on which podcast structure you use. Write us a review, do whatever you want to do, but and try to make it so that it auto downloads every episode every week. That would be great and super helpful. If for some reason that doesn't satisfy you and you're like, these guys are awesome and I want to help them more, for just $3 a month, you can be a stuffer, as I have labeled our $3 patrons, a stuffer. And that will get you this show and every other show on Monday instead of Friday. It will be uncensored, which usually means that Matthew has made at least one or two inappropriate jokes that are not so bad that I'm going to cut them. There's a couple that
they don't
even make it to the
trauma
Patreon.
From your childhood.
Yeah. And then if that isn't enough, for $10 a month, you can get the extra special stuff, which is that makes you a big stuffer, and that gets you access to some of my hopes and dreams, because we did talk about that, and I did cut that for only big stuffers. And I think that's about it. Matthew,
More stuff as we come up with it.
Yeah. But Matthew, you got anything?
No, I just want to thank everybody for coming by for speaking about Großstoffen.
Yeah. The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.